Local programming on KRWG Public Media made possible in part by viewers like you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Anthony Moreno. Welcome to Your Legislators. Joining us to talk about New Mexico's legislative session and issues facing the state is District 34 Democratic State Representative Raymundo Lara. Representative Lara, thank you so much for taking the time to talk with us. I believe this is our first time having you on Your Legislators, so I'd like to give you an opportunity to share with our audience a little bit about yourself and your background.
First of all, thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here today. I have always liked public television. I listen to the radio, so this is very important to me. So I'm glad I've been invited. I really appreciate it. So my name is Ray Lara. I represent House District 34, which consists of the communities of San Miguel, La Mesa, Chamberino, La Union, Santa Teresa, and Solon Park. I am currently an administrator with Gaston Schools. I run the instructional materials department. I've been with the school district going on 23 years now. This is I've lived in my community of Chamberino for about 28 years. So I've been part of the community for quite a while. Even before then, my family is from La Union. And I've lived in the Mesilla Valley for practically my entire life, and it was something that I've had a really positive experience, and this is something that I really enjoy doing.
Yeah, a lot of folks may be familiar with you, especially in the southern part of the county. So I'd like to talk with you about this legislative session. What do you feel are some of the biggest issues that may be impacting folks in the southern part of Doña Ana County?
So the biggest things that are going to impact people in the southern part of the county are education, number one, and economic development, infrastructure. Those are the big things that are part of that are very prevalent in the southern part of the county. Many of us in the smaller communities, struggle especially with infrastructure, anywhere from broadband to natural gas to water, wastewater, and these issues are really, really important to us in the southern part of the district, as well as giving the opportunity for our kids to have a place to go and to do things. So I really focus on building and working with the local entities regarding community centers and walking paths and splash pads and those type of things, where we can keep our families in our area. They won't have to go to El Paso or go up to Las Cruces to enjoy a splash pad or a nice park or a community center.
I'd like to discuss with you some legislation that you've been involved with and have sponsored or co-sponsored with. And one of those big issues has been voting rights in New Mexico. There's been a lot of concern about that issue, not only in our state, but across the country. So I'd like to hear from you about the legislation that you were involved with that had to do with voting rights in New Mexico. It seems to be making some movement throughout the legislature as we're speaking right now. So if you could give us an update on how you think this piece of legislation can make an impact to New Mexico's voting laws and elections.
So I'm really excited about this one because it's about access, and if we give our voters, if we give the public more access to the polls, that means we'll have a better representation of the voting block that we have in our areas. One of the particular pieces that I really like about this bill is that an individual can place themselves on a permanent absentee list. Let me give you an example. My mother-in-law, she votes absentee. She likes to get the ballot early. She applies for the ballot very early, and she holds on to it. She studies it. She reads it. She asks questions. What's this? I don't understand this, and so it becomes like a little family event when it comes to the absentee ballot. But the thing is that she has to request it every year, and this House Bill 4 will allow a person to request that absentee ballot one time, and they'll be placed on a permanent absentee ballot list until they choose to be removed from it. So this way they don't have to ask for it over and over and over. It'll go to them automatically, and it'll allow them to take their time with the ballot and really become an informed voter, because some of those issues or initiatives on that ballot are pretty lengthy. And if you don't know what the question is, or you don't know what the goal is trying to be accomplished, I think this will give folks a better opportunity to study those ballots. Another thing that I really like about it is the automatic voter registration. Automatic voter registration will significantly improve our voter rolls. I believe that it's going to give people more access, because let's just say, for example, if a person who let's just say somebody who's unhoused and and they want to be involved in that process, they want to be more involved in voting, they want to be more involved in bettering their life and moving up. If they apply for an ID, that would also they would be eligible to vote, because it would register them as well, or a driver's license, whatever it is. But I think these new initiatives that are coming in, once again, mentioning the automatic voter registration, this is about access. And by doing this, we're going to give many more people that access, whether they want to utilize that right to vote or not. It's about access, and they have the opportunity to do so. That's one of the other exciting things that I really like, is the automatic voter registration.
What about when it comes to the whole process of getting information out there to the public when it comes to issues like this that are involved with the bill? I mean, is there anything in there that can help educate folks about changes that may be on the horizon should this bill be passed and signed?
So there will be, I anticipate there will be, because once we get this bill up to the governor's desk and she signs it into law, then our Secretary of State would then start the process of educating the people of New Mexico. And the way I envision this is that there'll be rules, there'll be initiatives, there'll be information coming from the Secretary of State's office going to our county clerks, so they can disseminate that information, so they can get the word out. Okay, these are the changes. This is what's coming. This is what's great about this. This is how you can take advantage of this. So I think it's going to be a very collaborative effort between the Secretary of State and the county clerks.
Now, there's been a lot of concern about folks working at the polls in New Mexico, folks concerned about security as well. What are your thoughts on this, and perhaps what lawmakers and maybe the state can do to help make sure that folks are who do take the time to volunteer or work at the polls, I should say, are working in a secure and safe environment?
Obviously, we want a secure, safe environment for not only the workers, but the volunteers, the poll watchers, anybody involved in that process, because it's very important that it be a welcoming place. So if somebody who decides to go in person to early voting, if somebody decides to go to election day voting in person, they need to feel that it's secure. They need to feel that there won't be any intimidation. They need to feel that there isn't any undue influence from other individuals, because I believe that would discourage some people from voting. What we have now is we have polling places that are at school sites are pretty much gun-free, because any of our schools in New Mexico are gun-free zones. So a person can't have a firearm at a school site, at a polling place at a school site. However, there are some issues with other persons, I guess, protesting, you could say, or wanting to exert their Second Amendment right, and they may be out there with a firearm, and that may intimidate some people. That's another piece of legislation. If I think there's another piece of legislation that's trying to address that, and I think that's one of that's an issue that has come up before. That's an issue that has really, I don't know how to say this, I guess, set back the process a little bit because we want our elections to be free and secure. But at the same time, if we have individuals who feel that they want to express their rights, that they can do so in a manner that doesn't intimidate other people.
I see. Where do you stand on that issue, by the way, folks, taking firearms into a voting facility or polling place?
Um, New Mexico is an open carry state. I personally wouldn't do it. I don't see a need to do anything like that. But I feel that that can be used for a person to express their Second Amendment right to do that, or it can also be used for other reasons. And that's where we get into the gray area that we want to avoid is, between someone's right to carry a firearm and someone's right to go vote. So those two, it's there's a gray area in there that really, I believe that we need to really look at to figure out what would be the best for everyone. Obviously, one size fits all solution isn't going to work, but we need to bring everybody to the table and have a serious conversation about that.
Okay, I just have one more question that involves elections. New Mexico and the primaries have closed primaries. Where do you stand on potentially opening up those primaries? There have been some calls to open up primaries for folks for independents to weigh in on those issues. Where do you stand on that issue?
So I'm open to it. I have a lot of friends who are independents who would say, Ray, we wish we could vote for you now instead of in the general election. And this, I believe, would open it up to those people who are the independents or the declined to state voters. It would also allow, more access, and that's what we want. Is we want more people to come out and vote. There are many people who are independent voters who want to be involved in the process, who want to select their elected officials, but they're limited just to the general election, and they don't have the opportunity to select their candidates in the primary election. And I figure open it up. Like I mentioned before, there have people that I know in the community have asked me, well, we would love to support you, but we can't because it's a closed primary.
You represent a district that it's a border district. You live in the southern part of Doña Ana County. There's a lot of rhetoric involving the border across our country and in New Mexico as well. You are part of legislation that is titled the Unlawful Paramilitary Act. Can you tell us about this bill that you're involved with?
So this bill, what this bill is doing, so there is already federal legislation, there's already federal law that addresses this. What we don't have in New Mexico is a law that addresses this as well. So let's just say, for example, if there's a paramilitary group that has, for some reason, decided to pretend that they're law enforcement to assert themselves as Border Patrol, there's confusion. It causes confusion when there are groups that do this. There's what I want to be very clear here is that there's a difference between persons who go and protest and who exert their rights, as opposed to persons who are organized, who are working towards disrupting things, either whether government functions or other functions. So it's very important that this bill is looking at distinguishing that and making sure that regular citizens aren't confusing paramilitary groups for law enforcement, and that citizens aren't confusing paramilitary groups for persons who are trying to keep order or are trying to take control of the situation. And I go back. There's a couple of examples that have been used. The first one is, I think back before the pandemic, there was a paramilitary group that had set up in Solon Park. And those folks were imitating Border Patrol officers, and they were detaining immigrants that were coming across. So the reason this group in particular, were two of the members were prosecuted federally, was because they were on property that belonged to Union Pacific. So in that case, they were able to the feds were able to prosecute.
Now,
Then we had
go ahead.
go ahead.
Please
No,
continue.
we have the incident that happened in Albuquerque with the Oñate statue, and that paramilitary group there in particular, they were trying to protect the statue. I don't know what they were trying. They were trying to do something, but this group in particular had an organized structure. So they went there with a purpose to do either security or do whatever they were thinking of doing. And the difference between those two situations is that one happened on the railroad property, and that way the feds were able to come in. The other one was on city property, and which was in Albuquerque, and the officers, when they came and when the police came in and they took control of the situation, there was a lot of chaos. There was shootings. I think somebody was wounded, so it caused a lot of chaos. And this bill is going to allow law enforcement and prosecutors and our district attorneys to prosecute persons who are looking to create what's the word that I want to use, disruptions on purpose with an intent.
Okay, I want to move on and talk about another issue. Education, of course, a major issue in New Mexico. There's been a lot of efforts by lawmakers to improve salaries for teachers and educators, but also address issues dealing with child well-being. You have legislation that it aims to reduce ACEs, the adverse childhood experiences. Can you share with us a little bit about what this piece of legislation aims to do?
So this legislation. So if we're familiar with ACEs and what that is they're traumas that children and even some adults have with them, that impact a person's life, whether negatively or negligent. But what this is we're working towards, if we can address the needs of these young people, of these kids in the schools, then by eliminating these barriers, by connecting them to services, by making accommodations for these children who are experiencing these traumas, when those are eliminated, then the child's ready to learn. And if a child is worried about whether they're going to have a meal later, or they are uncertain whether mom or dad are going to be home, or what the situation may be there, that isn't conducive to learning. So if we provide the supports for our children in order to eliminate those barriers that they may have, then it opens up the door to learning. Then it allows them to become good students. It allows them to get a good education, because I really believe that that education is the way out of poverty. And if we can eliminate these barriers for these children, they're one step closer to being better citizens, to being educated, to having a good career and a great life.
Poverty, trauma impacts many folks, many families across our state. In your district, I'd like to hear from you. What do you think is, the most needed service to address this issue?
So the most needed service is we need to support and work with our schools, because the schools are a microcosm of our communities. And so if we're able to work with our schools, and what I mean is not necessarily the teachers addressing these issues with the students, but having enough counselors and having enough social workers in the schools to help the students and their families overcome these barriers and overcome these traumas, that'll allow them to succeed academically. So it has to be a holistic approach, how we approach these things. We have students or children may have trauma. They may be hungry. There may be food. There may be some housing insecurity, and if we can help them overcome those, or help them, at least the families or the children, to deal with those things, then once again, like I'd mentioned, it opens them up for learning, and it opens them up for success.
Many may feel that schools are the center part of a community. I'd like to hear from you a little bit more about efforts to examine community schools in our state. You have some legislation that you're involved with that deals with this issue. Can you share with us what was the inspiration about getting involved with that piece of legislation?
So I was approached to look at that legislation by one of my colleagues. So community schools, as they stand now in New Mexico, are optional. So the school districts can apply for funding through the grant process to open up a community school. So what this legislation was proposing was that we create a fund, well, not necessarily a fund, but place funding in the budget, in the state budget, for the school districts to have that option to open up a community school. That way, they don't have to go through the application process. The money is there already, and what that bill was trying to accomplish was to give every school district the opportunity to have a community school, as opposed to making it competitive.
I see. With this issue, what other pressing education issue do you think is impacting your district?
Education issue that's impacting my district. So one of the things that happens a lot, and I have some legislation over on the Senate side that we got out of the House Bill 533, is we need to work with and take care of our teachers and attracting and retaining high quality teachers for our classrooms. House Bill 533 is an insurance bill. I believe very strongly that our teachers deserve good benefits. Not only our teachers, but all school employees, because we're trusting them to teach our children, and we have to treat them well, and we have to compensate them well. And part of that, I believe, is insurance. Every time we as a state allocate more money in the budget to give school employees raises, most of the time those insurance premiums go up as well. I've heard of cases, and I've seen some cases where there are some certain school employees that their insurance goes up so much they end up taking less money home in their paycheck. So what this bill and as well as House Bill 102 and House Bill 36, which were my bills, that we're trying to tackle this issue about insurance with our school employees, because I strongly believe that if teachers have good salaries, they have good benefits packages, we can recruit teachers who want to be in our classrooms, who care about our kids, who want to make a difference in their lives.
I want to move on and talk about another issue that's being debated in Santa Fe during a legislative session, and that is firearm legislation. You are part of legislation involving firearm regulations. Can you kind of give us an idea of the bill that you're involved with and how you think it can make an impact?
So thank you for that. So I'm involved with House Bill 306, and House Bill 306 was heard on the floor this morning, and it passed the House overwhelmingly. So what this bill does is it holds individuals accountable who knowingly purchase a firearm for someone who cannot have one. A very good example of this was when we had the incident. I think it was this past summer there in Las Cruces with the shooting of the state police officer on the highway. This person who shot and killed the officer had a firearm that was purchased for him by his wife. He couldn't own a firearm. He wasn't allowed to have a firearm. So his wife purchased this for him in order for him to have that firearm. This is very important because this bill, even though there is a federal law that addresses it, there is a loophole. I guess you can call it a loophole that in New Mexico, because they can get away with that because we don't have a law in place that addresses that. Yes, there's a federal law, they can take care of it federally, but there's a lot of instances that happen locally where persons knowingly purchase or transfer a firearm to someone who shouldn't have one, who someone like a felon, for example, shouldn't have one. these people need to be held accountable because uh, this type of crime that happens is I heard earlier was the number two reason why there are so many guns on the street, because we have individuals knowingly purchasing firearms for other individuals who should not have them or can't have them.
Okay, I just have over a minute and a half left with you, but I want to talk to you about an issue that's been impacting many folks within your district, and that's infrastructure. Can you share with us a little bit about efforts that you've been involved with to improve infrastructure in the southern part of Doña Ana County?
Thank you for that. So efforts, I've been working with the county on several projects. I also work with our local water utilities, Lower Rio Grande, Chamberino, La Union. And so drinking water, natural gas, paved roads, those are very important as well, are an essential, very important need in our community. But one of the things that has been left out and kind of neglected that came to the forefront a couple of years ago or a year ago was when we had the flooding incident in La Union. And so flooding infrastructure and watershed infrastructure, watershed restoration and things of those nature have been left behind. And so we have a series of dams, earthen dams going up and down the east and the west Mesa that were built, in the 1960s and the 1970s by farmers to control the floodwaters coming into the valley. That has been a long neglected infrastructure that has really impacted many of the communities in my area within the last few years, La Union in particular, like I had mentioned. So in collaborating with the Flood Commission, collaborating with the county, we've been able to allocate funding to shore up those dams and get matching funds from the federal government. So everything is coming into place when it comes to those type of things. But one of the things that I would like to emphasize is that it takes time for these things to happen.
Yeah.
At least a couple of years. So when I meet with folks and we start working on things, it just takes time because the process moves slowly.
Okay, unfortunately, we're out of time. New Mexico Democratic State Representative Raymundo Lara, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Thank you.
We want to thank you for joining us on Your Legislators. I'm Anthony Moreno. We'll see you next time.